Today, we stand at a turning point in global power, a moment the world never expected to come this fast. This bold, this loud Iran, once surrounded by sanctions, shadows, and silence, has made noise, not with words, but with fire. The Russian S-400 missile system, tested in Iranian hands, and the whispers, the Khorramshahr-5 missile, allegedly capable of striking American shores. This isn't just about missiles. This is about message. This is about identity. This is about rising when the world tries to bury you. Let's break this down, not to spark fear, but to awaken strength, to remind us all, pressure doesn't break the brave, it forges them. Iran was never meant to be the victor in this global power game. At least that's what the world believed. Crippled under years of economic sanctions, politically isolated, painted as the villain in global narratives, many assumed its days of influence were over. But history has a strange way of favoring those who refuse to accept defeat. And Iran has proven that power doesn't always come from resources, wealth, or international approval. Sometimes it rises from resilience. The recent testing of the Russian S-400 missile system by Iran isn't just a military maneuver, it's a message to the world. A loud strategic declaration that despite being pressured, cornered, and excluded, Iran refuses to be silent. When you strip away support, when you corner a people, when you turn your back on a nation, two things can happen. They collapse or they create. Iran chose to create. It built knowledge under pressure. It nurtured innovation in darkness. While the world tightened the noose with embargoes, Iran's engineers, scientists, and leaders sharpened their tools, refined their systems, and formed alliances in places no one expected. Testing the S-400 in Iranian territory isn't just about military strength. It's about political independence, technological evolution, and the reclaiming of dignity. This isn't just Iran's story. It's a lesson for every nation, every movement, every individual who's ever been told they don't have what it takes. Power is not always given, it's built. And sometimes the tools you need to rise come only when you've been left with nothing. That's when you find your real strength. Because real power is forged under pressure, in silence, in the moments when no one is watching. Iran's test of the S-400 is a reminder that what seems like the end for some is the beginning for others. It's easy to look at systems like the S-400 and see just metal, wires, and firepower. But beneath that surface lies a different kind of force, a spirit that refused to die. It's about reclaiming narrative, about saying we may not play by your rules, but we are still in the game. And that applies not just to nations, but to people. You can be cast out, overlooked, underestimated. But if you choose to adapt, to evolve, to build, you will return, stronger, sharper, and more dangerous to those who tried to write your ending. Iran's S-400 test is not just a military checkpoint. It's a metaphor for rebirth under pressure, for innovation in the absence of help, for voice in a world that tried to mute it. And if Iran can build in silence and rise through pressure, then so can you, because being pushed down is inevitable. But staying down, that's a choice. And Iran chose to rise. So must you. They call it the Khorramshahr-5, a missile not yet officially confirmed, but already sending shock waves through global intelligence circles. Leaked reports suggest it can travel over 2,000 kilometers, potentially reaching U.S. military bases or even territories far beyond. But beyond the numbers, beyond the specifications, beyond the geopolitical implications, there's something more powerful at play here. This missile is not just a weapon. It's a symbol, a representation of belief, a declaration of resilience, a loud, unmistakable statement from a nation that has been told time and time again what it cannot do. What makes the Khorramshahr-5 truly dangerous isn't just its range or payload, it's the mindset behind its creation. When you're sanctioned, isolated, labeled, and threatened, and still manage to develop advanced ballistic technology, that's not just engineering, that's willpower turned into action. This missile, if real, is not merely a military achievement. It is a reminder that belief backed by relentless effort can break through walls, embargoes, and expectations. It tells every adversary, We are not just surviving, we are evolving. Now ask yourself, how often have you held back because you were told you're not ready? How many dreams did you delay because others said it's not possible for you? The world doesn't always need to see your full potential before you begin. Sometimes it's about launching before they're prepared, just like Iran may have done with the Khorramshahr-5. They didn't wait for approval. They didn't ask for validation. They simply acted. That's what belief looks like when it becomes bold enough to become action. The Khorramshahr-5 is a metaphor for your own hidden potential. The parts of you the world hasn't seen yet, the capabilities you haven't tested, the ideas you've shelved because someone told you they were unrealistic. But the truth is, the most powerful things in life don't begin with applause, they begin in silence, in secret, in the places where no one believes in you until you force them to. And even if this missile never launches, even if its full capability remains a mystery, its existence in the headlines has already done its job. It made people look. It made the world ask questions. It created impact through mere possibility. That's what belief does. It doesn't need to prove everything all at once. Sometimes just the rumor of what you're capable of is enough to shift the balance of fear, power, and respect. In every life, there comes a moment when you have to launch, ready or not. When you have to show the world that you can reach further than they ever expected. The Khorramshahr-5 may be a missile on the outside, but inside it carries a lesson. When the world says you can't, sometimes the most powerful response is simply to prove that you already did. When Iran tested the S-400 missile system supplied by Russia, it wasn't just about military alignment. It was about strategy, survival, and something much deeper, the power of unexpected alliances. For decades, global politics operated on predictable partnerships. You knew who stood with whom. You knew where loyalties were drawn. But in today's world, alliances are not always obvious. They're forged not on press releases, but in back channels, shared threats, and quiet cooperation. Iran and Russia, two nations often labeled as outliers by the West, found common ground not just in ideology, but in necessity. That's the nature of survival. It forces you to look beyond the surface, beyond tradition, beyond the comfort of old friends. Iran didn't wait for permission to be accepted by superpowers. It built relationships where it mattered most, where interests aligned, where power could be exchanged. The S-400 is not just a missile defense system. It is a signal that Iran is no longer isolated, that it has found ways to re-enter the global security conversation on its own terms. There is a powerful lesson here. When the world turns its back on you, don't just stand still. Find new doors, create new rooms. Align with those who understand your struggle. You don't need everyone to support you. You just need the right support at the right time. The strength of the Iran-Russia connection is not in how loud it is, but in how strategic it has become. While some nations build alliances for appearances, others build them to survive, and survival breeds strength that no speech or summit can fake. It's also a reminder that unpredictability is a weapon. When your enemies can't anticipate your next move, you gain time, advantage, and control. Iran was supposed to remain isolated, technically stagnant, outmatched, but instead it partnered smart. It stayed quiet until the time was right. The moment the S-400 system was tested, the world knew Iran is no longer operating alone in the shadows. It has support, it has reach, and it has learned how to play the game its own way. You too have the right to choose who walks with you. Just because one path closes doesn't mean you stop walking. Maybe the ones who once stood beside you are gone. Maybe the world you trusted no longer welcomes you. But maybe, just maybe, that's exactly when the real allies appear. The ones who weren't there for comfort, but for purpose. Who didn't need to announce their support to prove it. And just like Iran proved by testing the S-400, your alliances, your decisions don't need to make sense to everyone. They only need to move you forward. In life, as in geopolitics, success is not about being the most popular. It's about being the most And sometimes, the quiet alliances we form in hardship become the loudest victories when the moment comes. The so-called leak of the Khorramshahr-5 missile wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misstep or a failure in security. It was calculated. It was deliberate. And it was powerful. In geopolitics, just like in life, what you reveal and when you reveal it can shape perception, ignite fear and build respect. Iran didn't need to officially unveil the Khorramshahr-5 with a parade or a grand announcement. All it took was a whisper, a leak, a grainy image, a technical document enough to trigger discussions, headlines, and concern across continents. That's the power of silence and the brilliance of timing. Sometimes silence is not weakness. It's preparation. It's strategy. The things that are most dangerous are often the ones you don't see coming. The most powerful transformations happen behind closed doors, in basements, in deserts, in labs where no cameras are allowed. Iran understands this well. Instead of broadcasting every move, it builds in secrecy and speaks only through impact. That's why the leak of the Khorramshahr-5 was more than a media event. It was psychological warfare. It put uncertainty in the minds of adversaries. It forced them to ask, what else have we missed? And that's a lesson that goes far beyond international relations. How often do we assume someone is weak simply because they're quiet? How often are we blindsided by people who've been silently working, growing, preparing behind the scenes? Just because someone isn't speaking doesn't mean they're sleeping. Just because they're not posting doesn't mean they're not progressing. The leak of this missile reminded the world that silence can be thunderous when broken at the right moment. Your own life might be in a silent phase right now. Maybe you're working on dreams no one sees. Maybe you're evolving in ways no one understands. That's okay. In fact, it's powerful. Let them doubt. Let them assume. Because there will come a moment when you release your version of the Khorramshahr-5, your success, your strength, your breakthrough. And it won't need a loud introduction. It will speak for itself. Just like a missile doesn't need to shout, it simply launches, and the world notices. Iran didn't leak the missile specs to show off. It leaked them to remind the world we are still here, still building, still ready, and that lesson is for everyone who's ever felt forgotten. Keep building in silence. Stay focused when no one's watching, because eventually your silence will speak louder than the noise around you. Eventually, your preparation will become undeniable. The Khorramshahr-5 may never be launched in battle, but it has already struck a target. The minds of those who doubted Iran's capability. And that's the true power of a silent weapon. It forces others to rethink what they thought they knew. When your work finally becomes visible, make sure it leaves no room for doubt. Because when it does, it won't be a leak. It will be a shockwave. Fear is one of the oldest weapons in human history. Nations use it to control. Leaders use it to manipulate. And enemies use it to paralyze. But fear only works on those who haven't discovered the strength of their own dignity. When Iran stood up and allowed the world to glimpse the potential reach of the Khorramshahr-5 missile amid sanctions, global criticism, and military threats, it wasn't just a power move. It was an act of dignity, a declaration that no matter how many times you're painted as the villain, you still have the right to defend, to exist, to speak without shame. That's what dignity does. It demands space, even in the darkest of corners. The world often uses fear to define limits. You're told, don't speak too loud, don't dream too big, don't resist too hard because the consequences are severe. But dignity doesn't ask for permission. It rises. And that's exactly what we witnessed. Iran's missile capability may intimidate some, but beyond the fear is a people, a culture, a history that refuses to be erased. It's not about aggression, it's about assertion. It's about saying, we are still here, you will not write us out of the future. And in your own life, you've probably felt fear in the same way. Fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of standing alone. But dignity tells you something fear never will. It tells you that even if the odds are against you, even if the voices are louder than your own, your truth still matters. Iran could have chosen to remain silent, to avoid confrontation, to retreat into the background. But it didn't. It took the risk of standing tall in a world that prefers it on its knees. That's what real power looks like, not the power to destroy, but the power to endure. You don't always need to fight back with fire. Sometimes just refusing to be silent is enough. Just existing with pride, just walking forward when others expect you to break. That's how you win. That's how dignity defeats fear. Iran showed that strength isn't just in missiles or military tests. It's in persistence. It's in presence. It's in the refusal to vanish no matter the cost. And maybe today, your own war isn't on a battlefield. Maybe it's in a boardroom, a classroom, or even within yourself. But the lesson remains the same. Don't let fear be the loudest voice in the room. Let dignity speak for you. Let it carry you when everything else shakes, because fear will try to shrink you, but dignity will help you rise. At the heart of every great struggle is a quiet voice that says, I matter, I belong, I will not bow. Iran found that voice in the face of overwhelming pressure, and so can you, because history doesn't remember those who surrendered to fear. It remembers those who stood, unshaken, with dignity in their eyes. Today, it's Iran in the headlines. Tomorrow, it could be you in the spotlight. So build when they expect you to break. Rise when they expect you to run. And speak through action. Because when the world doubts you, that's when your fire matters most. Because no missile flies by waiting. It launches.